Novel Navigator. Chapter 171, Sleepwalker Poison. Terry rolled down a hill, bouncing and tumbling until he finally came to a stop at the bottom. He groaned in pain and looked around at the strange underground cave he had landed in. Roots, moss, and dripping water surrounded him in the eerie darkness. At that moment, 3 figures slid down the same hill and arrived at the underground cave. One of them brought a torch that illuminated the cave's walls. It looked like the ceiling and walls were made out of blocks of dirt and tree roots. The air was thick with a musty smell, and the sound of dripping water echoed through the cave. At the end of the cave, there was an enormous, thick tree trunk that seemed to be stuck inside the wall. This cave was clearly next to one of the big trees, and the ceiling above was just the forest ground above. This strange cave seemed to be nature-made. "What's this place?" Terry asked fearfully. "We found this a while back," Noel said with a grin. "I happened to accidentally fall into this hole, and like you, I rolled all the way here." Terry gulped. "In here, no one will be able to find us," Renee said with a giggle. "Why 2 of you here?" Terry asked, looking at Renee and Jake. "2 of you have different partners, don't you?" "We don't care about this worthless fucking class," Jake said with a scoff. "Noel wanted us to teach you a lesson or two, so here we are." "Is this really necessary?" Terry asked. "I haven't even done anything to you guys." "You fool, you're just bait," Noel said with a grin and drove his fist into Terry's stomach. Terry collapsed on his knees and coughed loudly, which brought out his breakfast all over the ground. "We've sent Jake's partner to inform Adam about us taking you," Noel said. "We've also given enough hints where we are, so if your friend still can't find us, I am truly disappointed." "Ha ha ha." Terry laughed painfully. "Why you think you can beat him in a fight?" "Of course not," Noel said. "It's an unfair fight to begin with. He has the system. If I had a system, yes, I believe I could easily win against him, but I don't, so we need to rely on other things." "Hey, Jake." Jake, with a smile, brought out a needle with strange black liquid dripping from its tip and handed it over to Noel. "This is Sleepwalker Spider's poison," Noel said with a chuckle. "With 1 drip of this poison, one will fall into a deep sleep for a long time." "That won't be enough," Terry said and screamed. "He'll just kill all of you." "That's what you think," Noel chuckled. "You think this poison just makes him a little bit sleepy? It has special functions, such as completely nullifying his skills. Meaning, he can't use his illusions." Terry's eyes shook as he realized the full extent of Noel's plan. "Today, we'll kill S-Ranker." Noel laughed. "They'll kill me as well." Terry gulped. "There's no way they want any witnesses." "Where are you going?" Yuri jogged after Adam, panting as she struggled to keep up with his pace. "Go back," Adam said. His eyes followed the footsteps on the ground that led deep into the forest. Even they didn't go that deep when they were searching for the ingredients. "If something happened, shouldn't we talk to the teacher?" Yuri asked. "If you want to do things right, you'll do it yourself," Adam said. He then extended his karaoke once again and then felt slight emotions coming from very near. It didn't seem like they were coming from above the ground, but instead from somewhere in the ground. Underground. Adam quickly followed the footsteps and found a nature-made hole near an enormous tree. The footsteps ended at the edge of the hole, disappearing into the darkness below. "Don't tell me you're planning to go there," Yuri said, her voice oozing with concern. "Go back," Adam said, then jumped down the hole and started sliding down. Yuri bit her lip and turned around at first, but then she sighed, turned back around, and jumped down the hill. Her screams faded into the darkness. After sliding and bouncing for what felt like hours, Adam finally landed on solid ground. The cave was dimly lit, but there was a torch lying on the ground nearby. Adam's eyes narrowed as he felt emotions coming from the darkness. Then, he felt something approaching him. With a single backstep, he dodged something very small but incredibly fast. He couldn't tell what it was. HAAA! With loud shouts, Jake rushed in with a broadsword and swung it at Adam. Adam grabbed him by the wrist, twisted his arm, and made him drop the sword, then kicked him in the groin with a ball-crushing force. Jake let out a painful scream and fell down on the ground on all fours. "Where's Terry?" Adam asked coldly. "He's here." Noel came from the darkness, dragging Terry behind him from his hair. "A little bitch of yours, just as ordered." Terry tried to shout something, but his mouth was covered by a mouth gag. It sounded like there was something very urgent that he wanted to convey. Adam pulled out his sword from his inventory. Its blade seemed to have been sharpened recently. "Oh ho, not that fast." Noel grinned and put the blade of his sword against Terry's throat. "Lower your weapon or your friend will have a quick end." Adam lowered his weapon, the tip of the blade facing the ground, but he didn't drop it. "You can still survive," Adam said to Noel. "You have 3 seconds to let him go or you'll die." I'm not the one who's going to die here." Noel grinned. Adam frowned, and at that moment, something sharp stabbed him at the back of his neck. His eyes widened in shock, and a wave of sleepiness came over him like a tidal wave. He touched the back of his neck, then turned around and saw Yuri, tears falling from her eyes, holding some kind of needle. "What?" I am sorry," Yuri said with tears on her face. I also want the bullying to end." Good job, ugly Yuri." Renee giggled from the darkness. Terry screamed loudly, but everything came out muffled. Noel let go of Terry and made him drop to the ground. Terry couldn't move an inch as his limbs were tied tightly with rope. "Sleepwalker poison, how are you feeling?" Noel laughed loudly. "You didn't see that happening, now did you?" Adam looked at Yuri, his eyes shaking, and he took a step back in a shock. It made him remember something that he had been trying to forget. A memory that had been haunting his dreams ever since his regression. Liam's face replaced Yuri's, and this scenario felt exactly the same. The same feeling of betrayal dug into his heart like the claws of a ferocious beast. Adam's eyes started to sink into a deep, dark pool of despair. The sleepiness tried to corrupt every single part of his mind, but he fought against it with all his might, and slowly, the mana ocean in his mind started to run crimson and its waves turned high as skyscrapers. I am sorry," Yuri whispered, tears streaming down his face. Adam swung his sword and sliced through her body in one clean stroke. Her legs fell to the left and her torso to the right, blood spilling out onto the ground. She was still screaming and crying, but then everything turned dark for her as her death came. As quick as the strike of his sword. Noel, Jake, and Renee turned silent. The atmosphere turned suffocating, like someone was pushing a pillow over their faces. Terry's screams also stopped. He was just looking with his wide eyes. Then, slowly, Adam turned around to face them, his navy eyes had turned red, and his mouth had shifted into a rageful smile. In his eyes, Noel's face had changed that of calamity. Jake looked like Nicholas, Renee looked like Lisa, Terry looked like Amelia. "You trying to betray me?" Adam's laugh sounded sinister, and then he took a step forward. "I thought we were friends." "Why is the poison not working?" Renee shouted. "I followed the recipe perfectly." Noel screamed. "No, the poison is working." Jake shouted. "He is just trying to act tough. Just kill him." "Shut up, Nicholas," Adam said, looking at Jake with his red eyes. "You were always the loudest one, but you won't be making noise for much longer." "Nicholas, who?" Terry frowned. "What is happening to him?" Chapter 172, The Wings of Berserker. Rage. Adam's memories got completely rewritten. It was like he had returned to that day. The day of the betrayal. It's fine. Noel tried to calm down his panicky friends. He can't use any of his skills. We should be able to still kill him with ease. Why yeah, you're right. Jake nodded hesitantly. Renee licked her dry lips, but then heard something behind her. She turned around slightly and saw the roots of the tree slither like snakes in the darkness. What's that? Renee, focus! Noel screamed. I am sorry. Renee turned to face Adam and held her thin-bladed sword tightly in her hand. Adam, with sword in right and shield in left, took a strong step forward. Strangely enough, his veins were pulsing around his arms like snakes slithering beneath his skin, emitting reddish radiance as if his body were on fire. His current state was not unheard of. It had happened to a couple of people before, but it was still a rare phenomenon. It had received the name of berserker state or lethal rage. In this state, a person wouldn't be able to tell friend from foe, and those who had undergone this state often had no recollection of their actions afterward and instead found all of their enemies and friends brutally slain afterward. Thus, both names were quite fitting. The back of Adam's jacket ripped open, and his exposed back looked like it was swelling, and then strange wing-like appendages burst out from his skin. Those wings started to look more like the petals of a flower, red and orange, and around 8 of those petals sprouted from his back, making him look like some kind of mystical creature. Ding, ding! Second mystery, Berserker Rage, has been unraveled. Berserker Rage, its state originated from the little god, who was once known as the angry god of tantrums. Whenever he threw a temper tantrum, the world trembled in fear, and disasters would befall the land. During his tantrums, no one could calm him down, not even the other gods. Those tantrums often lasted thousands of years. When he finally reached adulthood, the angry god of tantrums mellowed out and became a peaceful deity, eventually receiving the title of the little god. While the angry god of tantrums no longer exists, his famous berserker rage is still part of every single living human being. Third power unlocked. Third power, the wings of Berserker. What the fuck are those on his back? Renee asked, thinking that those wings looked very beautiful. He wasn't supposed to be able to use any skills. Did the sleepwalker poison fail? Noel felt frightened and started backing off. Unfortunately, while this place was hidden nicely, there was only one exit, and Adam was currently standing right in front of it. There was no escape. Noel then saw Terry on the ground, as shocked as the rest of them, and then picked up him, and placed him in front to act as a meat shield. Don't move an inch, Adam, or your friend will die. Noel screamed. Renee and Jake also moved behind Terry. Amelia, you betrayed me for these kinds of people. Adam said while looking at Terry. How funny. Amelia. Terry didn't know who that was. Is he talking to me? Adam put his arms close to his chest, and then his wings sprouted outwards, and with one leap forward, he soared across the cave like a majestic eagle. I'll really kill him! Noel shouted while placing his blade against Terry's throat, but soon noticed that Adam didn't seem to care even the slightest. Adam placed the flower-petaled wings in front of him like a shield and rammed straight into the 4 people, sending all of them flying through the air like ragdolls. Their backs crashed against the enormous tree, leaving them dazed and confused on the ground. I need to escape. Renee stood up with her jelly-like legs, barely able to stand. We'll die. One of the orange, flower-petaled wings shot forward and impaled through Renee's chest, nailing her into the tree like a bizarre crucifixion. Ah! Renee gasped in pain and shock. Renee! Jake shouted in anger and ran towards Adam with his broad-bladed sword in hand. Then, the left-sided wings unfolded and slashed through Jake with their razor-sharp edges, leaving him lying on the ground in a pool of blood. He was still alive barely. How is this possible? Noel clumsily took out the rest of the poison needles from his pouch and then tossed all of them over to Adam. He hoped that at least one would hit. The left-sided wings opened up in front of the needles and blocked all of the 100 tiny, poison-clad needles. The wings were so durable that none of those needles managed to break through, thus the poison didn't manage to do anything. "Calamity, I didn't expect you to be this weak," Adam said, then, with his unfurled wings, flew at Noel, grabbed him by the throat, and slammed him against the tree with ferocious force. Noel gasped for air as he struggled against Adam's grip. Adam pulled back his head and then head-butted him straight on the nose, breaking it and causing blood to gush out. The three friends were now all gasping in pain. Renee, still impaled by one of the wings, felt her life slowly drain away. Jake was nearly unconscious. If left unattended, he would die in a couple of minutes. "Gee, god damn it!" Noel mumbled through clenched teeth as he struggled to stay conscious and figure out what to do next. Adam revealed his steel-bladed sword and impaled Noel through the chest. He left him there, dangling there with his feet off the ground and sword in the chest. Now, one last person. Adam turned to the tied-up Terry, a look of terror in his eyes. He tried to scream for Adam to stop as he realized that he wasn't in the right state of mind, as he was clearly thinking that he was someone else. However, not a single word of his came that sounded understandable. Instead, all that came out was muffled shouts. Adam pulled out his sword from Noel's chest, letting him fall to the ground, and then crouched in front of Terry, ignoring his tied-up state, and just coldly looked down at him, while his wings moved behind him in a mesmerizing dance. "Amelia, I should have seen it. I should have known that you were a snake. Why was I so blind?" Terry tried to scream, but again muffled. "Amelia." Adam frowned and lowered his head with an unfocused look. "Wait, didn't you just join Crimson Hounds?" "No, we're part of Platinum Mercenaries, or am I?" Slowly, the face of Amelia vanished, and it was replaced by Terry's teary visage. "Terry." Adam looked at him in shock and quickly removed his mouth gag. "Are you all right?" "Ah." Terry breathed in relief. "Why, you remember me? What the heck was that?" Adam touched his head, and it felt like he had a pounding headache. When he turned to look at the other three, he still saw Calamity, Nicholas, and Lisa. "What in the world is going on?" Adam frowned and then turned back to Terry. With his sword, he cut off his ropes and set him free. As he was about to stand up, he felt something heavy on his back, and when he turned around, his eyes turned wide in shock as he saw his beautiful flower-petaled wings. "Wings? What the fuck? Let's leave," Terry said, after finally being cut free. "You've been poisoned." "Poisoned?" Adam asked, feeling a sudden wave of dizziness washing over him. "Right, I am. Feeling quite sleepy. The teacher can still cure you, we need to go now." Adam stood up, but before leaving, he turned to look at the three bleeding bodies lying on the ground. He was still seeing those three faces that had been haunting his nightmares for too long. He had a feeling that if he let them live, they would only come back to haunt him again. "Adam, we need to go." At that moment, the whole cave started shaking, and the roots of the tree burst out from the ground. They moved like whips and started lashing at everything in sight. "What the fuck is that?" Terry screamed and backed off towards the exit. Adam frowned. Near the enormous tree, a health bar interface appeared out of nowhere. "Minor boss, crazy lashing tree monster. HP, 100%. A minor boss." Terry screamed. "This place is a hidden boss room. Terry, leave," Adam said, tightening his grip on his shield and sword. "What about you?" Terry asked. "Go and don't look back," Adam replied sternly. Chapter 173, Crazy Lashing Tree Monster. EGA, R. Adam's memories got completely rewritten. It was like he had returned to that day. The day of the betrayal. It's Eflin eol eert tulkman wat ish naik ds he can't use any of cllxu adals eblb to still kill him ae. Why yeah, you're right. Jake nodded hesitantly. Renee licked her dry lips, but then heard something behind her. She untered a Andrew Heilgulst DNA aws the Orst fo et trier hotels kiel ianske ni et darkness. What's that? Renee, focus! Noel screamed. I am soy, rr Irene ruatund ote caf amda dandel her et hidban el sodrulf giddy in her hand. Adam, with sword in right and shield in left, took a strong step forward. Strangely enough, his veins were pulsing around his arms like snakes slithering beneath his skin, emitting reddish radiance as if his body were on fire. His curtain stia sa tundruna of. It ahd pbani otia yulok fol popo beref btu it saw still a rare neon po. It had received the name of berserker state or lethal rage. In this state, a person wouldn't be able to tell friend from foe, and those who had undergone this state often had no recollection of their actions afterward and instead found all of their enemies and friends brutally slain afterward. Ths hdob nas meru yudkai enftig.I. The back of Adam's jacket ripped open, and his exposed back looked like it was swelling, and then strange wing-like appendages burst out from his skin. Those wings started to look more like the petals of a flower, red and orange, and around 8 of those petals sprouted from his back, making him look like some kind of mystical creature. IDNG, DNG. Second mystery, Berserker Rage, has been unraveled. Berserker Rage, its state originated from the little god, who was once known as the angry god of tantrums. Whenever he threw a temper tantrum, the world trembled in fear, and disasters would befall the land. Near Dug Sih Ma, Snutrite no enodluoklagam mih don, no and the height dogs oatsnmsrchua eftun ladset townscha of year c. When he finally reached adulthood, the angry god of tantrums mellowed out and became a peaceful deity, eventually receiving the title of the little god. While the angry god of tantrums no longer exists, his famous berserker rage is still part of every single living human being. 3 OPWRE, and Calco U. Third power, the wings of Berserker. What the fuck are those on his back? Renee asked, thinking that those wings looked very beautiful. He wasn't supposed to be able to use any skills. Did et kralusalip ponsoy lfa, Iolan Feltengedford and started Nikab Fof. Unfortunately, while this place was hidden nicely, there was only one exit, and Adam was currently standing right in front of it. There was no escape. Nol etun was etyrr on te dinyorg as kosid as ethrets fohum etdna tunheed seepgup imh nad plehim in front ottcasa at me desli. Don't move an inch, Adam, or your friend will die. Noel screamed. Renee and Jake also moved behind Terry. Li Mie, Woi erdi teba m for eshadin seek fope, ople adma said huil klaniog ta rr.edi hu nn.hoof. Amelia. Terry didn't know who that was. Is he talking to me? Adam put his arms close to his chest, and then his wings sprouted outwards, and with one leap forward, he soared across the cave like a majestic eagle. Tu I lalier kill I, hmolnea he said I leolin pak si blad satangia trers wire tota, tub sunat nidek that aadm detund mes otk or even eth glyslost. Adam placed the flower-petaled wings in front of him like a shield and rammed straight into the 4 people, sending all of them flying through the air like ragdolls. Their backs crashed against the enormous tree, leaving them dazed and confused on the ground. I dini to saa, si pyrenist to up twirel lakijal izeg, eberly able to dinats. Llwed, e. One of the orange, flower-petaled wings shot forward and impaled through Renee's chest, nailing her into the tree like a bizarre crucifixion. Ah! Renee gasped in pain and shock. Eer catched to sao ni ner nda towards mata if his roll debt bedo aruods in nd. Then, the left-sided wings unfolded and slashed through Jake with their razor-sharp edges, leaving him lying on the ground in a pool of blood. He was still alive barely. OHWSISTOP, LBSSEONL Clysium LONITE UAT Saint FO et Sinapo Enelds from Ishakup and Enhet Tosts all FO et might rove OT. Mata. He hoped that at least one would hit. The left-sided wings opened up in front of the needles and blocked all of the 100 tiny, poison-clad needles. Tajins re so edlorb the enon fos to sinidolm donyi tabakarth gruho sut the oiopsn ended tima egna otodytg. Calamity, I didn't expect you to be this weak. Adam said, then, with his unfurled wings, flew at Noel, grabbed him by the throat, and slammed him against the tree with ferocious force. Leon espagged for your sa egist drulksitagna matazirgb. Adam pulled back his head and then head-butted him straight on the nose, breaking it and causing blood to gush out. The three friends were now all gasping in pain. Eenalitz elapmai by one of Ed Ignal's left relief lozirdian yadade. Jake was nearly unconscious. If left unattended, he would die in a couple of minutes. Gee god damn it! Noel mumbled through clenched teeth as he struggled to stay conscious and figure out what to do next. Dmae advelrsi eltslo dab sodr and dalam pn loktor the ts.se eftelmi etr heek ding galn reet this ifeet ffo et orngdu dan drows in hte. These. Now, one last person. Adam turned to the tied-up Terry, a look of terror in his eyes. He tried to scream for Adam to stop as he realized that he wasn't in the right state of mind, as he was clearly thinking that he was someone else. Eu or hev. Ont asilneg drow of siekmet the ednuazd ats. Eldad nuern basn pled lla that he came out softened flow shouts. Adam pulled out his sword from Noel's chest, letting him fall to the ground, and then crouched in front of Terry, ignoring his tied-up state, and just coldly looked down at him while his wings moved behind him in a mesmerizing dance. Amelia, I should have seen it. I should have known that you were a snake. Why was I so blind? Rarte tried ot miscare, tub agne f. Flood me. Amelia. Adam frowned and lowered his head with an unfocused look. Wait, didn't you just join Crimson Hounds? No, we're part of Platinum Mercenaries, or am I? Slowly, the face of Amelia vanished, and it was replaced by Terry's teary visage. Ytradma udkal at him in ostnda ilsia ka amdirv simoda gagrutrl, h guy. Ah! Terry breathed in relief. Why, you remember me? What the heck was that? Adam touched his head, and it felt like he had a pounding headache. Nw he unrit oti ku tahet ethri ethra still sa t kamel, aios, nikolha, and Lisa. What in the world is going on? Adam frowned and then turned back to Terry. With his sword, he cut off his ropes and set him free. Sa he was uatbo to ants pu, et plefch stinam he vihia on ihskc abadn holn he enrooted. Arn adsiasi uternda edi ni shock as aws siu to afleb plurweetlfia gsn.iw. Wings? What the fuck? Let's leave. Terry said, after finally being cut free. You've been poisoned. End pies, ooaadm ad ske flengia endudzi off of ziziden wisagrivomi.h ritk, ima. Fneeljktue eel pies. The teacher can still cure you, we need to go now. Adam stood up, but before leaving, he turned to look at the three bleeding bodies lying on the ground. Eduza still ism those te asefkath te hd banik thar in his esmthgrina for tulgon. He. Da aliniif kat fi etelm de ilve ethi would only mosi basi to enhot me agna. Adam, we need to go. At that moment, the whole cave started shaking, and the roots of the tree burst out from the ground. They moved like whips and started lashing at everything in sight. Ta whtek fuk sihta, t? Trarirasamt and kgabe off otters the zeit. Adam frowned. Near the enormous tree, a health bar interface appeared out of nowhere. Nim ro bos srza ismgal tsra nmo. HP, 100%. A minor boss. Terry screamed. This place is a hidden boss room. Rev.eael Mata Dios, Htanka Hiziperg no ihs still dangudsor. Chapter 174, The Call for Help. It was dark, sunless, and eerily quiet. Somewhere in this god-forsaken place, 3 figures slowly woke up from their deep, dreamless sleep. My neck. Noel sat up in a hurry and touched his neck. He almost could hear the sound of his neck breaking. He then looked around, trying to make sense of his surroundings. The ground below him was hard and cold. It was dark all around him. Then, he saw 2 of his friends waking up. Renee and Jake looked confused and disoriented. What's this place? We are at the doorsteps of the dark world. They heard a voice, and when they turned to the voice, they saw Yuri sitting on the ground, holding her legs close to her chest with a look of sadness in her eyes. The dark world. Noel frowned and then saw a door in the distance. The door happened to be the only place that emitted light in this wretched place. It looked like a golden portal with edges made out of dark stone. It's where the dead go. Yuri said. For 2 hours, you'll spend in the world of the dead before you return to the world of the living without any memories. Then what the fuck are we waiting for? Noel stood up with a scoff. Renee, Jake, stand the fuck up. However, they weren't moving and instead wore looks of despair on their faces. They had realized something Noel hadn't. Ha 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 ha. Yuri started laughing so hard that tears began to fly out of her eyes. What's so funny, bitch? Noel asked venomously. If you had succeeded, all of us would still be alive, but you worthless fuck can't do anything right. It's funny that you still haven't realized it. Yuri giggled. There's no second time for us. We don't have the power of the system yet. Yes, we can use it, but it's basically just a placeholder. So? Noel frowned. Those without the power of the system can't respawn. Yuri shouted and laughed. This is the last time we'll be inside the Mortal Online. Once we have experienced the dark world, we will never be able to return to this game. What? Noel whispered in surprise, having to take a step back in shock. It's over, Noel. Jake, with a disheartened expression, stood up and started walking towards the glowing door. You're planning to give up just like this? Noel scoffed. Cowards. That's enough, Noel. Renee followed after Jake, her voice filled with disappointment. We should have never listened to you. Fine, give up like a bunch of sissies. Noel screamed and sat down, not planning to move an inch. I ain't leaving like this. Childish. Yuri stood up and also headed towards the door. We deserved this. We should have known better than to try to kill him. As he watched his friends and Yuri leave, Noel pressed his teeth together in frustration. They soon left through the golden door, but Noel didn't follow after him. He just continued sitting there, stewing in his own guilt and regret. 25th floor, the dungeon. The leaves and branches rustled as Terry ran past them, a panicky look flashing through his eyes. He was somewhat lost. It had already been a couple of hours since he left Adam behind, and he'd hoped that he had already returned to the elder tree so he could ask for help from the teacher. However, this forest was tricky. It was like it was trying to keep him from finding his way. It felt like the forest and its 1,000 trees had a mind of their own. After a while, whether it was purely coincidence or not, he finally stumbled out of the thick forest and saw the door of Elder Tree. He also finally saw other students, some still trying to find the herbs and spices. The time limit was almost up, so they were panicking and hurrying, but they couldn't find the last ingredients. It had been almost 5 hours, and still, only Adam and Yuri had found all the ingredients. Terry ran past the students, who turned to look at him with raised eyebrows, and as he saw the teacher standing in the distance, he shouted, "Teacher, help!" Bertha, boringly, turned her eyes to Terry and saw him run towards her as if his feet were on fire. "What is it?" Adam needs help." Terry panted heavily and tried to explain in a hurry. He is fighting a minor boss. Noel and his friends are also there as they tried to kill him. Bertha listened silently through his explanations, still wearing a look of indifference on her face. After he was done explaining, Bertha looked up into the sky through the swaying branches and saw the sky turn orange. "It's too late," Bertha said. "I don't want to be outside during the night." But Terry's eyes widened in shock at her indifference. "They're your students. It's their own fault for going that deep into the forest," Bertha said. "It wasn't Adam's fault. He came to help me as Noel and his friends kidnapped me." Bertha didn't seem to care and placed 2 fingers against her lips, then whistled so loudly that all the students in the vicinity heard her. "Time's up. Time to return inside." "You're really planning to abandon them?" Terry asked in shock. "Aren't you supposed to be strong?" Bertha looked at him in anger and said, "You too. Return inside, and we'll talk later about your lack of respect." Terry gritted his teeth hatefully and turned to look back at the forest. He was praying for Adam's safety. Bertha looked in boredom towards the forest. She, in her prime, reached a powerful royal prince rank, but she was way past her prime. In a month, she would reach her 60s, and that's why she used her makeup to cover most of her wrinkles. She was perhaps only as strong as grandeur in her current state, and she didn't want to risk her life, knowing that this floor during the night was extremely dangerous for someone of grandeur rank. She was only the teacher of the institute because of her vast knowledge in herbology, one of the few that truly mastered it. "Even if I go help them, they're already dead by the minor boss," Bertha thought with a scoff. "Doesn't matter just how much of a genius that S-ranker is, they're no match for that tree." Bang, bang, bang. It had been a couple of hours since the fight started. Adam, with his beautiful wings, clashed against the tree monster, their battle raging on. The underground cave looked destroyed, the ceiling about to fall apart any moment now, and the ground had been flipped upside down. Crimson blood flowed down Adam's face, caused by several wounds he'd received during this fight. The tree monster also looked injured, with long, sword-made scratches running down its bark, and most of its branch arms had been cut down. At the beginning of the second phase, it had around 12 arms, but now only 6. Its health had also dropped down to 28%. The wings flapped and carried Adam to the air, then he turned his sword into a reverse grip and started spinning like a spiral, but so fast that it looked like a whirlwind of blades. The tree monster screamed and lashed its hundreds of roots down towards him, but then Adam flashed past the roots, his sword already slicing through the bark. With just a split second, he appeared behind the tree monster and left behind an enormous slash wound on its bark that immediately started bursting with that brownish liquid. It was his strongest attack so far. The tree monster's health immediately dropped below 20%. The tree monster's eyes, hidden behind the thick layer of branches and leaves, glowed with fury. Its wood body started to burn from the inside out. The third and final phase of the battle was about to begin. Chapter 175, Night Forest. The fire burned strong and bright inside the tree monster's body. As it took a step forward, the fire channeled itself through its arms and shot out in all directions, igniting everything in its path. Adam covered his body with his brilliant wings and then flew through the fire like a phoenix. The fire couldn't reach him. As soon as he emerged from the other side of the fire-clad roots smashed down at him like whips of flames, but again, Adam put the wings around himself to protect him from harm. The whips didn't reach him, but the brute force of those whips sent him flying back into the flames. With the wings protecting him, he flew through the flames and landed safely on the other side. Immediately after, the tree monster ran through the flames, its wooden body completely on fire like a raging inferno. Its leaves had already turned charred and ash, The hundreds of burning roots whipped down at Adam's wings, scorching everything on their paths, but the beautiful wings held strong against the fiery assault. The underground cave caught the fire and quickly began to fill with smoke, making it difficult to see anything. It was near impossible to breathe with the thick smoke clogging his lungs. Adam couldn't help but think about how this fight would have gone if he didn't have his wings. With his former defensive power, he would have been dead 100 times over already. These wings were life-saving and most likely also in the future, as he could always fly away from the fights that he couldn't win. With each passing moment, he fell more in love with these wings, as they were the perfect defensive and offensive weapon for a tank such as himself. There are 2 more powers left in the little god arsenal. I wonder what those are. Cough. He suddenly coughed because of the smoke and used his wings to fly further away from the black smoke. It was very annoying to fight now in this smoke-filled cave. However, he didn't want to leave this place, as the tree monster wouldn't be able to follow him. The boss and minor bosses of the floor had their own designed area, which they couldn't leave. This cave was one of those designed areas, and the tree monster was basically trapped here. Adam wanted to kill it. The escape wasn't an option for him. I didn't fight for hours just to escape near the finishing line. Adam's eyes bulged wide open, then, with wings in front of him, he rushed through the black smoke and arrived near the burning tree monster. Everything around the tree monster was burning with tall, scarlet-red flames that were reaching the tall ceiling. Ignoring the flames, Adam flew straight through with his steel-bladed sword in hand and slashed through the burning bark. The tree monster let out a deafening screech of pain. The burning roots followed after him like a hunting pack of fiery serpents. With his wings carrying him into the air, Adam flew around the tree monster, delivering hundreds of quick slashes into the monster's body. Some were shallow as a paper cut, while others cut deep into its bark-like skin. With another loud screech from the tree monster, it whipped down one of its burning roots and slashed deep into Adam's chest. Instead of an ordinary flesh wound, the flesh started burning and sizzling like it was being cooked from the inside out. Arg! Adam screamed in a horrible pain, then another whip of fire landed on his wing and sent him flying to the back end of the cave, eventually crashing into the wall. HP, 111/650. -5 HP. -5 HP. While his chest was burning, his health dropped with every passing second. Adam took out a water canteen from his inventory and spilled it over his burning flesh. It caused terrible pain to him, but it also helped to soothe the flames and the burn. The charred flesh looked terrible, and he was still losing health at a slow pace, but not as much as it did when it was still on fire. The tree monster stomped towards him, its fiery roots dancing around him like living whips. The wings carried Adam back into the air, and it looked like he was airwalking, stepping on the empty air as if it were solid ground. Swoosh! The fire crackled and popped as it spread throughout the cave. While that happened, the burning tree monster and the winged young man exchanged a long gaze. Both were injured and exhausted from the battle, but there was also mutual respect and understanding in their eyes. The tree monster, while still being chaos being, was much smarter than the previous monsters Adam had faced. It could think and feel fear and pain. It wasn't as smart as humans, but not too far either. While it thought this young man was easy to kill at first, it didn't take long for it to realize his strength, and chaos beings respected strong ones. The wings on Adam's back spread wide like blooming flowers. The burning tree monster just laughed in a deep, guttural voice. Then, the burning roots appeared around the monster, looking almost like extended limbs. "You," the tree monster suddenly spoke. "Strong." After those words, the burning roots moved as if they had a mind of their own and lashed out towards the winged young man. The wings wrapped around Adam, like a mother's arms protecting a child, and protected him from the fiery assault that didn't seem to have an end. Behind the wings, Adam's lips curled into a slight smile, and then the wings burst outwards and sliced through the burning roots with ease, freeing him from the fiery assault. The wings then flapped with such power that the flames were extinguished in an instant. The dancing flames around the tree monster's body vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a charred wood creature. Wings sprouted wide, and then Adam soared through the air, his sword slicing through the charred creature's remaining limbs with ease. The health bar that was floating on the air reached 0. It turned red and then shattered into a million pieces, signaling Adam's victory. The tree monster collapsed on the ground into a pile of charred and ashes. You defeated minor boss, crazy lashing tree monster. 1000 XP. Level up. Level 4 to 5. At the pile of ash, a treasure chest emerged that was great contrast to the destruction around it. It was a silver chest with gold engravings around it. Adam picked up the chest and stored it inside his inventory. He didn't think that this was a good place to open it. He then walked away from the smoke-filled cave, climbing up to the ground above. As soon as he reached the fresh air, he noticed that it was dangerously dark. The sky had turned dark, and the sun was nowhere to be found. It was nighttime. As soon as he noticed that, dangerous howls echoed from the distance, and he felt like there was danger everywhere around him. So, I am not out of the danger yet. Adam chuckled as he thought it was funny and then stood up, his wings spreading wide. Wherever he used Kiryoku, he felt bloodlust coming everywhere around him. It felt like he was completely surrounded, but he couldn't see anything with his bare eyes, except a dark forest with trees standing eerily still. Adam's gaze turned cold, then he tightened his grip on his sword and started walking into the forest, the wings on his back giving off nice light. And just like that, he, too, disappeared into the dark forest, but unlike the thousands of victims that have died in this night forest, he had a strength that belonged here. Chapter 176, Extra Lessons. The door opened, and Ilkin stepped into a small break room designed for the elder tree door guards. After filling the cup with fresh coffee, he took a seat at the table and let out a couple of yawns before settling in to enjoy the quiet moment of morning relaxation. A few sips later, the door again opened, and Will Ebert, with his bed hair and rumpled shirt, shuffled in with a tired smile. "Good morning, Jan," Will Ebert said and took some green bean tea instead, as he didn't fancy coffee, and then took a seat beside his friend. "Morning," Ilkin said and took a sip of the coffee. "Any interesting happening today?" "The same old shit," Will Ebert and then checked the time on his timepiece. "Oh, finish the drink quick, we'll need to be on our post in 5. These work hours suck," Ilkin said and took a sip of his coffee. "I understand why you complain every day." "Oh, the strict Ilkin is finally coming to the light." Will Ebert smirked, then finished his drink and went to wash the cup. Ilkin did the same, and after they put on their work uniforms, they left the break room and walked down a long wood-made hallway until they arrived at the door of the elder tree. They shared a glance, then brought out 2 identical-looking keys and inserted them into the locks simultaneously. 1, 2, 3. Click. They turned their keys about 90 degrees, and the door creaked open with a gust of fresh air. Ilkin pushed the door open and let out a relaxed sigh as he stepped into the morning air. This was the best moment of his days, taking the first step of the morning and feeling the sun on his face. However, at that moment, he saw something on his peripheral vision and turned to see what it was. A young man, in his early 20s, was sitting beside the door, his back against the bark of the elder tree, and his eyes were slightly open, staring at the ants that were avoiding his boots. "Holy shit!" Ilkin screamed and jumped back in surprise. Villebert's mouth hung wide open. "Wait, you're Adam, why the hell are you outside?" They didn't hear from anyone that there was a student left outside. "Oh, it's morning already." Adam scratched his head and noticed the brightness of the sky. "Why you stayed outside the whole night?" Ilkin asked, disbelief in his face. "Yeah." Adam stood up from the ground, slipped his hands inside his pockets, and stepped through the door. The 2 guards noticed that the back of his shirt and jacket was ripped apart from what seemed to be a result of a fight. Why weren't we informed that someone was left outside? Ilkin asked. Adam must have been Bertha's student. They were the only student group outside yesterday. Why didn't she tell us? Ilkin asked. Because there's nothing we could have done. Rebirth said. How did he survive? Ilkin gulped. The same question haunted his mind. At the top floor of the elder tree, inside the headmaster's bed chamber, Renard, snuggled under the blanket, read through some of yesterday's reports. Beside him on the bed, Bertha, naked under the blanket, slept soundly, her chest rising and falling with each breath. At that moment, a sound of hard knocking came from the door. Arg, what the hell is it now? Renard removed his glasses, put them on the bedside table, and then shook Bertha awake. What? Bertha's eyelids fluttered open, and she looked around in confusion. Put on some clothes. Renard said hastily and then shouted towards the door. Who is it? It's me, headmaster. It was Mr. Caretaker's voice. What does that creepy fuck want? Bertha asked while revealing her naked self from under the blanket, and then put on the clothes from last night that were crumbled on the floor. Silence! Renard said sternly and shouted. Wait a second. After putting his reports aside, he left the warmth of the blanket and put on his clothes that were scattered around the room. Once he and Bertha were dressed, the door opened, and Mr. Caretaker stepped inside, bowing to both of them. What is it? It better be important. Renard said and took a seat on his table near the window, while Bertha sat on the bed, fidgeting her toes as she waited for Mr. Caretaker to speak. Yes, sir. Mr. Caretaker nodded. I've received a report that young Adam, who did go missing yesterday, returned safely from night outside. What? Renard frowned. He went missing, what? Oh, you weren't aware. Mr. Caretaker shot a side eye towards Bertha but quickly turned back to the headmaster. Bertha, what the hell is he talking about? Renard asked with a frown. Yesterday, we went to gather herbs and spices. Then, at the end of the day, when the night was starting to near, I heard that Adam encountered some trouble with a minor boss. A minor boss? Renard frowned. And he survived? What do you mean that he survived a day-night outside? I thought he died to the minor boss. Bertha said. It seems that he survived, but didn't make it to the institute in time and had to spend a night outside. How could this happen? Renard asked angrily. Bertha, why do you sound so indifferent? He was your responsibility, was he not? The students die all the time, Bertha said. I thought it was better to cut down the losses. Cut down the losses. Renard looked like he was laughing, but no sound came. What a joke. Mr. Caretaker, was that all? It looks like there were some losses. Mr. Caretaker said. Noel, Renee, Jake, and Yuri, students of Class E, didn't make it. I am sorry, but I have to ask. Bertha said in her usual indifferent tone. So what if Adam had died? Why am I blamed for it? They went and got themselves in trouble in the first place. It's all politics, you dumb broad. Renard snapped out. If even S-rankers die in here, why would anyone keep sending their children here to learn if they just die? Bertha stayed quiet. S-rankers are off limits. I also want to convince him to join my cause. Renard said. He would be a powerful ally. Adam is waiting for you too, if you want to talk to him. Mr. Caretaker said. Fine, let's go. In the headmaster's office. Adam, with his legs crossed and a bored expression, waited while reminiscing about yesterday. He didn't have to wait much longer as the door opened and the headmaster finally arrived. After taking his seat at the opposite side of the table, Renard nodded to Adam. I am happy to see you well, Adam. Adam grunted in response. Renard's eyebrow jumped in surprise. That response took him off guard, and he had a feeling that Adam seemed slightly different from his old self. It was as if that one bit of childlike innocence that Adam used to have had disappeared. Show some respect, you're speaking to the headmaster. Bertha screamed out. That's fine. Renard raised his hand to silence her. He had a long night, and he must be tired. I doubt you had a chance to sleep, right? Adam didn't answer that question. He tried to log out during the night as the sleepwalker poison and just natural sleepiness tried to put him in a deep sleep. Surprisingly enough, he couldn't log out because it was impossible to do so if the game detected that one was inside a combat. While he wasn't outright attacked, not even once, he felt like he was stared at non-stop. It meant he was at some kind of combat of auras. You can leave, Renard said after seeing him being non-responsive. We'll talk about this later. I'll allow you to skip today's classes. Adam nodded and stood up, then, as he saw Bertha, he asked. Do I get the reward? Unfortunately, my partner died, so I suppose I am only one to get the reward. Bertha nodded sternly. The reward was a potion made out of those ingredients. It's called the elixir of stamina. It increases one's energy and endurance for a full day. May I trade that reward for something else? Adam asked. For what? Bertha frowned. May I get extra lessons about herbology? Adam asked. I'd like to learn how to make potions myself. You'll learn that from my classes, you don't need extra lessons. Bertha said with a frown. The main reason she refused was because she was too lazy to teach any more than needed. Hey, Bertha! Renard said sternly. Adam is genuinely interested in learning and could benefit from your guidance. Extra lessons don't hurt anyone. But Bertha stammered, but after seeing his cold gaze, she lowered her head and nodded. All right, fine. I appreciate it. Adam said without a smile and then left the office, but instead of using his floor orb, he jumped off the railing and started falling thousands of meters down. Then, his beautiful flower-petaled wings sprouted out of his back like blooming flowers and stopped his fall. With that, he landed on the floor of the dormitory, and his wings shrank back inside his body. Chapter 177, Arena Online. The glass lid of the virtual reality pod opened like a sliding door. From there, a sleepy-looking young man climbed out, ruffling his messy hair and stretching his arms above his head. It had been quite some time since Adam had left the game and came back to the real world. It had been too long for his own taste. Hira, has anything happened? Adam asked as he left the virtual reality pod. No, it's been quiet. Good. Adam stepped inside the elevator, then, with one press of a button, returned to his room. After also opening the bronze virtual reality pod inside his room, he put on some clothes for outside this time. Instead of going to sleep, like he should, he decided to visit the town for a moment. He left his room, and then stepped down the stairs to the first floor. After arriving at the front door, he slid his feet inside his shoes, and when he put his hand on the door handle, he heard a sound of the door opening and the sound of rushed footsteps. Adam! A sweet voice belonging to Alice came from the stairs, and after seeing him, she smiled and asked. Where are you going? Shouldn't you be at school? Adam asked and checked the time on his phone. It's weekend, dummy. Alice said with a giggle but also looked concerned. Are you all right? Yeah. Adam scratched the back of his head. Well, where are you going? Alice asked with a smile. Can I come with you? I plan on visiting a barber. Adam said and showed his long and messy hair. It's about time. I'll come with you. Alice didn't accept no as an answer and put on some outdoor clothes and shoes. Fine by me. Adam chuckled and watched as Alice gathered her things. A short while later, she was ready, and then they left the house behind, heading towards the town together. The town was not far, so they walked there with the summer sun shining over them like a silent guardian. Since it was the weekend, the local farmers' market and fair were in full swing, bustling with activity and people from all over the region. While walking to the barber, they checked out the fair and sampled some of the delicious food offerings. Those foods had the freshest ingredients, straight from the nearby farmers' market. Look! While eating the food, Alice pointed at one of the carnival games that was surrounded by a crowd of people. Adam looked over and couldn't see what kind of game it was from where they were standing. Curious though, they went to check it out and saw two machines looking like virtual reality pods, but in a sitting position, and there were two people sitting on them. At the screen behind them, the crowd watched as the two fought in some kind of virtual coliseum, cheering and shouting as if they were actually there. "Is this Mortal Online?" Alice asked curiously. "No." Adam shook his head. "It must be Arena Online. It's another virtual reality game." "Oh, is it good?" Alice asked. "As good as Mortal Online?" "They're different?" Adam asked. "However, no, it is not as good as Mortal Online for multiple reasons." "Why?" Alice curiously asked with a cute tilt of her head. "Arena Online is unsmooth in terms of gameplay mechanics. The owners of that game tried to make the game open world, but their NPCs were just lifeless dolls, so they kept it as 1 versus 1. While in Mortal Online you can move as smoothly as you can in the real world, Arena Online is different in that aspect, as you feel like you're controlling a puppet version of your body." "Oh, I see." Alice smiled and said. "Give it a try, please." "I am not sure, I need to have my hair cut," Adam said, as he was not that interested in playing it. He had some experience with Arena Online, as there was a moment of his life when he properly tried to get good with it, but in the end, he returned back to Mortal Online like a moth to a flame. "I can stay in the line for you while you get your haircut," Alice said with a smile. "I've never seen you play, so I want to at least once, please." Sigh. Adam looked at her cute face and couldn't say no, so he nodded with a sigh. "All right." Yay! Alice then pushed Adam in the direction of the barber shop. There was a barber shop nearby, its doors wide open, and it was currently empty as the last customer just left with a freshly cut haircut. As Adam stepped inside the establishment, he didn't see anyone there, so he just took a seat at one of the chairs. A couple of seconds later, a middle-aged woman came out from the back room, holding a pair of scissors and a comb. "Oh, hello, are you here for a haircut?" she asked with an amiable voice. "Yes." Adam stood up and showed his long threads of hair. "I let my hair grow too long." "All right, just take a seat, and we'll get you sorted," she said with a smile. Adam sat on one of the chairs that were facing a mirror. He stared at his reflection and wondered what kind of haircut he should get. He hadn't thought about it much. "Do you have a haircut in mind?" she asked as she adjusted the cape around his neck. "Not really," Adam replied. "Just shorten it up a bit, I guess." I'll see what I can do," she said with a wink, and then proceeded to pick up her scissors. Outside, under the scorching sun, another round of matches finished up. The crowd was still as big as ever, and the line had grown bigger. Finally, Alice arrived by the machine. She looked at it with amazement but could tell that it wasn't as high-tech as the VR pods of the Mortal Online. At that moment, she started to hear some whispers coming from the people in line behind her. "Wait, isn't he?" They were staring towards the other machine, where an older man with short grey hair was standing. He was surrounded by friends of his, chatting and laughing. Who is he?" Alice asked the person behind her. "You don't know?" The person shook his head and said, "Highland champion of Arena Online, Oath." "Oath?" Alice frowned. Highland champion, so he is good. He is one of the best. The person said with a look of admiration. I heard that he is visiting these carnivals all around Highlands and challenging others to arena online, but I never expected to see him here. He sounds amazing. Of course he is. The person said. He ended up as fourth in the World Cup, after all. Since these people know him, Arena Online must be a popular game as well. Alice thought. Well, of course it is, it's a revolutionary game just like Mortal Online. I pity you, the person said while looking at the beautiful young woman. It's still a rare chance to play against a world-class player such as himself, so have fun. Oh, I am not the one playing. Alice said. I am here with someone, and he is coming back soon. Oh. The person thought it would be obvious that she wasn't alone. Your boyfriend might get embarrassed by him. Alice's cheeks were slightly flushed, but she shook her head. I don't think so, I think he'll win. Chapter 178, Arena Fight. There you go. The hairdresser said with a sweet smile and removed the cape from Adam's neck. Adam looked into the mirror's reflection. Before the new haircut, his hair had already reached shoulder length, and the bangs were hanging nearly over his eyes. Now, his hair was styled in a trendy, layered cut that framed his face perfectly. It was around ear length with razor-sharp edges that made him look like a completely different person. Adam turned his head side to side, checking the haircut from every angle, and then he nodded with a satisfied look. Thank you, this is good. I am happy that you like it. The hairdresser said. After leaving the seat, he quickly paid for the new haircut and walked out of the salon with lightness in his steps. As soon as he inhaled the freshness of the outside air, he saw that there was an even bigger crowd around the two machines. Right, I have to play. Adam shrugged his shoulders, slid his hands inside his pockets, and headed to the crowd. Then he noticed that Alice was by the machine, already waiting for him to come back. It looked like she'd been waiting for a while, as the crowd seemed to become anxious as they waited for the next game to start and for their turn to play. Sorry, I guess I am late. Adam walked over to Alice, then caught sight of the grey-haired opponent, who didn't even give him a courtesy to acknowledge his presence. Ah! Alice turned to him with a sweet smile, and after seeing his newly cut hair, her smile grew. It's your turn to play. Right. Adam nodded and took a seat on the machine, then put some kind of bowl-looking helmet over his head that was connected to the machine. Oath, his opponent, did the same while his friends laughed and chatted with each other, not really believing that their friend's opponent had any chance of even being a good fight. Good luck. Alice said with a nervous look in her eyes. She had never seen Adam play Arena Online and wasn't even sure whether he had played it, but she doubted it should be that different from Mortal Online. However, in fact, it was vastly different. Adam pressed on the start button, and his consciousness slowly transferred into the game world's avatar. After flapping his eyes open, he found himself standing in the Colosseum's armory. There were racks of weapons and armor lining the walls, glinting in the dim light of the hanging lantern. He slowly opened and closed his hands, then tried to move his fingers individually, and an annoyed look appeared in his brows. It feels so slow and clumsy. Those who hadn't experienced Mortal Online thought that this game was the closest thing that came to the real thing. It was actually nowhere close. The difference between two games was like night and day. More people played Arena Online as it was easier to get into. There was nothing like a tutorial that cuts down the player base by over 90%. However, those who had played Mortal Online rarely enjoyed Arena Online because it lacked in every aspect compared to the former. At that moment, a series of dinging noises echoed throughout the halls of the Colosseum, and then a system interface purple in color appeared before him. 1 versus 1. Write your name. Below that, a holographic keyboard appeared in the air, inviting him to input his name. Adam wrote the name of his alternate persona Silent. Silent vs. Oath. Weapons, randomized. Ready. Adam pressed on the ready button, and so did his opponent instantly afterward. At the same moment, thousands of different-looking weapons appeared in the interface, shuffling around like a lottery wheel. After a short while, it came to a stop, and the weapons for the match were chosen. Weapon, dual swords. Two identical-looking swords appeared in Adam's hands. They were sharp-bladed with thin hilts. After that, light armor clad over Adam's body. It looked like the armor of ancient gladiators that battled in similar-looking colosseums. Creak. The metallic, rusty gates swung open, kicking up the sand off the ground, and then the roaring of a virtual crowd filled the arena like a tidal wave. Adam stepped through the arena and saw the arena filled to the brim with the NPCs, but they looked so fake and lifeless, their eyes glazed over like the eyes of mannequins. Ha! Adam shook his head with a wry smile. It was why the open-world aspect of Arena Online never succeeded, as it felt like living in a fake world with dolls keeping you company instead of real people. Then, the rusty, metallic gates appeared on the other side of the Colosseum, and Oath, dressed in similar light armor with two dual swords in hand, stepped out into the arena with a similar look of indifference in his face. Does he even enjoy playing this game? Adam wondered. He looks so bored. He didn't know that Navy Town's mayor, who was in charge of the fair, invited Oath to participate as a special guest. He didn't want to be here, but he got paid a pretty sum to show up and play. After finishing up with this one game, he planned to leave, perhaps visit Ivy Crest to get completely wasted with his friends. Ding! Countdown starts. Oath stood still, his swords dangling by his side like he was too tired to lift them up into a proper fighting stance. Ding! 3. Adam tapped his foot against the ground. Ding! 2. Oath let out a yawn. 1. The crowd in the outside world leaned closer to the screens. Alice held her breath. Ding! Fight! With a burst of energy, Oath suddenly sprang into action, and he crossed the distance instantly. It looked like he just planned to end this fight as soon as it began. As he brought his swords down, Adam suddenly swung his swords up and deflected Oath's attack like it was nothing. Oath's eyes widened slightly. Adam lunged forward and started swinging his swords in a fluid and unstoppable motion, pushing Oath back further and further. Their swords clashed with a loud and metallic sound that echoed throughout the arena. He knows how to fight. Oath thought for a moment, but then he started showing why he was one of the greatest Arena Online players, as with just a few movements of his swords, he managed to stop the flurry of Adam's strikes. It was surprising to him that his opponent knew how to fight because Arena Online's combat was quite complex and annoying. The amateurs wouldn't even know how to move their limbs properly in this game, as it was nowhere the same as moving in the real world. That's why movement was actually much harder in Arena Online than in Mortal Online. Everyone who tried Mortal Online already had decades of experience with moving their bodies, so obviously it was going to be easy in Mortal Online. However, in Arena Online, they were basically moving their bodies like a puppet master, controlling marionettes. It was difficult at first. Not bad, I suppose. Oath brought his sword down and pushed Adam a step back, then closed in and delivered a swift kick to his side. The kick sent Adam sprawling down on the ground, but he quickly jumped back to his feet. The pain system in Arena Online was also different. There was no pain whatsoever. In the waist, where Adam got kicked in, the lingering sensation of numbness spread across his injured waist. Chapter 179, Revolutionary Techniques. The crowd outside watched as Oath managed to land the first hit. His friends laughed among themselves, not even really keeping eye on the match as they knew how it would end. It would most likely end in a couple of seconds. Alice bit her nail nervously. See, the person behind her shook his head. It's not a shame to lose to Oath. He is the champion of the Highlands. There is no one in this country that is better than him. Alice ignored him and focused her gaze on the screen. Oath started his famous rush attack. It was an ever-changing series of attacks that usually left his opponents scrambling to keep up until finally the attacks landed with a devastating blow. Adam moved his swords as fast as possible, barely able to block the strikes that were coming at him from every angle. Some of the attacks aimed at his legs, so he had to jump and dodge in order to avoid being hit, which ended up making the fight quite awkward. At last, one of the swords cut into his light armor, but luckily it only left a shallow cut on his arm. Oath shot his right arm forward, the sword stabbing through the air like a blade of wind. It was heading straight to Adam's chest, but then, with a reverse grip of his sword, he brought the blade down on the incoming sword and slammed Oath's blade into the sandy ground, causing a loud clang to echo through the arena. Then, with his other sword, he slashed towards Oath's face, but he also had his own second sword and brought it up to block the attack just in time. Adam pushed Oath a step backward with all his might, then took a step forward to enter the close combat and grabbed him by his wrists to try to disarm him. Oath didn't let go of his swords and instead kneed Adam in the abdomen with full force. Adam gritted his teeth and slammed his forehead against Oath's face, causing both of them to stumble back. The blood dripped down Oath's face as he growled with an uncomfortable look. After a second of stumbling, they rushed towards each other again and entered another exchange of blows, blade against blade, each strike more fierce and determined than the last. Oath's friends quieted down, and one of them dropped their cigarette on the ground that lost its flame. The crowd's jaws hung low in awe of the intensity of the fight happening before them. "Come on, come on!" Alice tiptoed closer to the screen, her heart beating like a drum. Adam stayed stern while avoiding Oath's sword strikes. He wasn't swinging his swords anymore and was just dodging. It didn't work, he thought to himself. As he head-butted, he tried to use influence on Oath. It failed, and Adam knew why. Oath wholeheartedly believes that he is better than me. He doesn't think that even in a million years I could beat him, so the influence didn't work because of that. I thought it would shock him if I managed to land a proper hit on him, which would cause his confidence to show some cracks, but it didn't. Oath's face was bleeding, but it didn't seem to matter to him as he kept rushing in, his sword slashes becoming faster and more aggressive. Adam jumped backwards, barely in time to dodge those slashes. He made a big enough distance between them to catch his breath. I'll need to crack his confidence, and there's only one thing I can do. Oath let out a single breath and then jumped straight after Adam. His fighting style was very aggressive, and his former opponents knew that he would keep pursuing his opponents relentlessly until they were too exhausted and defeated. At that moment, Adam tapped his feet on the ground 3 times so fast it looked like he never even raised his feet, and then he disappeared like a speedster. There was only a faint blur of movement left in his wake. Where? Oath's eyes widened in shock. Then, something cut through his armor, around the waist, and left behind a bleeding wound. What? Oath looked at his waist with a frown. The hell? As he turned around, he saw Adam standing around 10 meters away from him, one of his swords bleeding with Oath's blood. How can he move so quick? Oath asked from himself. Hacker? Impossible, this is not his own machine, so how could he hack? Speed step. Adam thought to himself. Technique found in the future. A bug in the game's system allows moving at extreme speeds if you just step on the ground 3 times in quick succession. After it was discovered, it was never patched either, so all the players had to learn it in order to stay competitive. It wasn't as easy to learn as it sounded. Adam again stepped on the ground exactly 3 times very quickly. This time, he moved in a straight line and stabbed his blade deep into Oath's chest. Arg! Oath collapsed on the ground and lost the grip on his swords. The sword had gone straight through Oath's heart, and he was slowly dying. How? Oath whispered weakly, his eyes filled with confusion. Without having time to hear the answer to that, his consciousness left his avatar as it died. Ding! Winner, silent. Ah! Adam slowly opened his eyes and heard the excited scream of Alice, who suddenly entered his embrace with a warm hug. You did it! Alice screamed in excitement. The crowd looked shocked and confused. They had no idea what happened in the fight. They didn't understand how Adam could move at such speeds. Why you cheated? Then, friends of Oath, angered beyond belief, shouted towards them. Hey, no, he didn't, sore losers. Alice said and showed her tongue. How could he cheat if he didn't do anything to the machine? Explain that, sore losers. No one could move like that. Oath's friends shouted. It's obviously cheats. The crowd also seemed suspicious at the way Adam won. Enough. At that moment, Oath rose from the machine and told his friends to quiet down. He then walked around the machine and looked straight at Adam, who was also climbing out of the machine. How? Oath asked. You didn't cheat. So how did you do it? I call it the speed step. Adam said, not planning on hiding anything since he wasn't even planning to play Arena Online after this. Speed step. Oath frowned. If you tap the ground 3 times exactly 3 times so quickly that it only looks like one step, the game misunderstands your real speed, allowing you to move like I did just now. The crowd exclaimed, and then fell silent in awe of that discovery. They hadn't heard about it, and since even the 4th-ranked player in the world didn't know about it, it must be a very new discovery. They looked at the machines, wanting to test it right away. Wait, for real? Oath looked shocked. 3 times. Not 2 or 4. 2 is too little, and if you do 4, it's 1,000 times harder to do. Adam said. Oath touched his chin, then nodded and went to one of the machines and went straight back to Arena Online, wanting to test it. Then, one member of the crowd ran to the other machine while the rest of the crowd surrounded the screen, excited to see whether Oath could do it. While they were busy with that, Adam walked away with Alice, humming a song under his breath. Did you discover that by yourself? Alice asked curiously. It sounded like a revolutionary technique. Adam just smiled. In fact, it was discovered by him in his past life. It was one of his proudest moments of his life, as his discovery completely changed how Arena Online was played. While in Mortal Online, he was mostly taking credit for other people's discoveries in this life. However, he didn't have to do that in Arena Online, as in his past life, he was one of the greatest legends there as he discovered a total of 4 revolutionary techniques. Speed step was just the first one. He doubted that Oath's mind would be able to handle the other 3. Chapter 180, Beyond the Wall. New World, Ebon Reach, the ending days of the 5th month of the year. The new Crimson Hound's headquarters was located at the far corner of Mercenary Street. It lined up with the other guild buildings, its dark crimson banners fluttering in the wind. They didn't have their own yard, courtyard, and backyard anymore. Instead, it was just a simple 3-story building, but there were a lot of rooms to house all of the members. In terms of size, the indoor was quite massive and impressive. The first floor had its own reception area, the second floor had the offices and meeting rooms, and the third floor had the living quarters. There was also the basement, hidden below the main building, and there were all the storages and their vault. It was heavily guarded by armed security at all times. The front door of the main building was always open, and they sometimes received guests who came here to conduct business deals, such as making quests to either find their missing puppy or something more serious. While mercenaries came and went by the front door, at the second floor's meeting room, 3 people were gathered. They were Digby, Valera, and Zon. On the meeting table, a map was spread out, showing the terrain beyond the wall's harsh landscape. There, and there. Digby pointed to 3 different locations on the table. That's where you must go, Zon. I see. Zahn rubbed his beard that had slightly grown since the departure from Dawn Watch. The treasures of ancient civilization will fund us for the foreseeable future, Digby said while looking at the map. He was slightly reluctant to send Zahn there without them, but they had other troubles brewing in Ebon Reach, so they couldn't leave their guild alone even for a moment. However, they didn't plan to send Zahn there alone, and he would be accompanied by a small group of mercenaries of their choosing. Zahn looked at the map, his fingers tightening against his palm. The Crimson Hound was not in a good place now. They spent most of their guild funds to transfer their headquarters from Dawn Watch to Ebon Reach. It was a money sink since they had to pay for all the transport and then had to pay Ebon Reach's guild of mercenaries to be here. That's why this mission beyond the wall was of utmost importance. Zahn's job was to go beyond the wall, to the wretched wasteland, and find rare artifacts that were from the ancient civilization that used to live behind these walls. A few of those artifacts would fund the next year of guild expanses. Digby folded the map, then handed it over to Zahn with a deep look. "We're counting on you." "I got this," Zahn said with a smile, then nodded to Valera and then left the meeting room, stepping down the stairs and out towards the streets. The weights of the expectations pressed heavily on his shoulders. After traversing through the busy streets of the Ebon Reach, he left the shadow of the looming buildings and saw the massive wall reaching high into the sky. It was the only thing that was standing in the way of the total chaos. However, the originals of Ebon Reach went by their days with smiles on their faces. None of them were thinking about the horrible future if the wall collapsed one day. They had a complete faith in the sturdiness of the wall. "I am going beyond that wall." Zahn felt some butterflies flying in his stomach. The unknown aspect of that place was terrifying to him. However, he just forced a fist and put more weight into his step, trying to shake away the nerves. After a short while later, he arrived by the horse stables and saw that some crimson-cloaked figures were already there waiting for him. They were mostly holymen and grangers. They were part of the second and third teams of the Crimson Hounds. After they saw Zahn arrive, they bowed in unison. Before being promoted to the core team, he was a leader of the second team, so he already knew a couple of guys that were coming with him. After a brief moment of catching up with them, they hopped on the saddles of their horses and rode off towards the wall. At one moment, they were still surrounded by the buildings of the city, and the next, the buildings had changed into military-looking barracks with high walls and barbed wire fencing. The closer they got to the wall, the more imposing it became, looming over them like a giant monolith. After a short while, they rode an open road that led them straight to the massive gate of the wall. There wasn't any line to wait for, as there weren't many people willing to go outside the wall. A guard was waiting for them. After giving him an ID, the guard went and opened the gate with loud creaking noises, then the Crimson Cloaks rode through the gate and entered a dark chamber inside the wall. The gate behind them closed. Then, another gate opened ahead of them, and this time, it led straight to outside. Zahn gulped, then grabbed his reins tight and started galloping through the open gate, followed by 10 strong horsemen. As soon as they were outside, they noticed it was harder to breathe, the air thick with humidity and the smell of smoke. The landscape ahead looked dark and foreboding, drought-filled land reaching to the far mountains, and a few trees that were scattered throughout were smoking like a dying fire. Atop the far mountains, a storm was brewing, with silvery lightning dancing above the dark clouds and thunder rumbling in the distance. Kayak! A scream of terror pierced the eerie silence. Zahn and the rest turned their gazes over to the sky and saw a couple of vultures circling the sky above them. A few of them sighed in relief after seeing just a couple of ordinary birds, but then they noticed just how high they were, yet they still looked much bigger than ordinary birds. Then, the long-winged vultures headed down, and as they neared them, they continued turning bigger and bigger until they were giant-sized vultures, their screams echoing through the valley. "Giant vultures!" Zahn screamed. "Ride faster!" He immediately recognized them as a breed of chaos beings that were common above 30 floors of the dungeon. The horses galloped as quickly as possible, but then one of the long-winged vultures dove down and swallowed one of the horses whole alongside the mercenary riding it. A paleness came to everyone's face as they witnessed that horrible sight. Another giant vulture headed down, and this time it was heading straight to Zahn, who was riding at the front of the group. The steel sword appeared from the scabbard, and Zahn, with one swing, cut the vulture's wing off and made it crash straight to the ground. The rest of the group also fought off the vultures. After seeing that it wasn't worthwhile to continue the attack, the vultures retreated, flapping their wings loudly and strongly as they flew far into the distance. They were usually preying on the weak, that's why they were waiting near the gate. If the fight didn't seem worth it, they would usually retreat. Damn it! Zahn looked behind at the terrified looks of his group members and realized this was the worst way to start their mission outside the walls. Now, the fear had crept into the hearts of everyone present. I knew this place would be dangerous, but we already lost one.